You're listening to the Flex Success Podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit.
I'm your co-host Lizzie, and this is Dean. We'll be covering all topics relating to health, fitness, and bodybuilding.
Join us as we use our in the trenches experience and up-to-date science to provide you with information that you can actually use.
If you like what we do, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and tag us on social media.
Welcome back, Flex listeners. We are back with a very high caliber crew of individuals today. We're joined by none other than Coach George, mate. Welcome.
What's happening, guys?
And the two most recently awarded IFBB pros, Matt O'Reilly and Tom Stanley, mate. Boys, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're on. The boys are back.
Yeah, and I think we're breaking Tom's podcast virginity, mate. Are you nervous?
A little bit, not too bad. No, it should be good just to chat a bit of shit.
This is kind
Pretty
of like
much.
This is like podcast foreplay first. If we was like going to raw dog him on his virgin debut, we'd have him on a podcast with Liz, really, and she'd rip him apart. But
Oh yeah, it's going to be a lot easier without her here. She kind of scares me.
All right, now we have to elaborate, Tom. What about Liz scares you? Is it the fear of the would you rather?
Oh, I think it's the directness. She's very direct, and it's like fuck, and puts me on the spot. You know.
Confront.
Plus, I know she. I hold her very highly because of all the treats and all the food ideas that she gives people. So she's just very highly rated. You know, makes me nervous.
See, now she's trying to lay claim to absolutely everything that I've ever put on social with regards to food, because she's got two so far. She's got the popcorn Magnum, and she's got the raisins in rice because of the Lebanese background. You know.
Hey, they're quality picks, but I just need to know more. I'm sure she's holding some more secrets.
I'm cognizant of the fact that we've got two bodybuilders that are, a week post comp that are still very interested in talking about food. So
Very focused.
Yes.
and I'm just
so
fat.
Georgie, what was your first impressions of the Australian shows, mate? You've just come back from there. You spent a month in Australia, touring around all the Australian shows like some royalty, and holding the flag for Flex, getting in all of the cool photos that I missed out on.
I said you needed a cutout of your face that we could just stick on mine, and then I could just walk around and be honorary dean for the day. Mate, Oz was, the country itself was fantastic, and the bodybuilding scene I was seriously impressed with. I knew it was good. I knew it was pretty good from what I've seen on the surface from across the other side of the world on the screen, and that watching the live streams around season A and season B, the last two seasons. You can see there's obviously quite a large degree of athletes competing. There's a high pool of athletes, which, again, you do always assume the cream always will rise to the top, essentially. But because of the mass number, I feel like the cream ends up being like a stacked out first call out normally of very good individuals that you can usually make an argument in some degree, on most cases, for quite a lot of them for first, second, and third, which you don't often see. What I'd say in the comparison to the UK. Usually there's like one or two outstanding athletes, and then they kind of trickle off towards the back end. But I'd say it's very competitive, very high standard, and the venues and stuff like that. Like, again, comparison, I'm always thinking back to the UK and what I've seen in the UK and some European shows that I have been to. I think the level put in from a venues perspective and what there is for the athletes is also more comparable to like European shows. Almost, I wouldn't say it's quite there, but it's getting closer toward that standard. But definitely a little bit better than some of the venues we have here in the UK. I'd say consistently across the board, which is pretty cool. No outside marquees and basic BTEC stages set up in a garden. So yeah, mate, I was on the surface, couldn't be more impressed, and it was pretty cool seeing how big the crowd was at all of the shows, getting behind the athletes. So really, really good bunch of people there at the Oz bodybuilding scene.
Yeah, I love the staggered seating at Sleeman Centre, because there's kind of like no real bad seat.
Yeah,
you don't get caught behind some tall motherfucker that blocks all the view and then stands up cheering. So, Georgie boy, you have any? I know you had a sausage sizzle experience in Australia too, mate. How'd that go down for the first experience of the classic sausage sizzle?
Apparently, there is a wrong way to eat it. And me being a Neanderthal just grabbed a piece of bread and grabbed the sausage and started cracking on. But apparently it has to run diagonally so that every bite is sausage and bread and all this. You overcomplicated a sausage sarnie, to be honest. Like in my head, I'm British, get a piece of bread, slap the sausage between it and crack on. But it was good. The beef dogs were better than pork dogs. I'll give you guys that. So using beef dogs, the big ones, they were fucking good.
Yeah,
I couldn't work out slam. I kept trying. Liz will be so disappointed. I had the video set up ready to rock and roll so you could see me making a fool of myself. And every time I bit the biscuit, it just crumbled to pieces before it even touched any hot liquid. So I just ended up eating packets upon packets of Tim Tams, trying to achieve one Tim Tam slam. And eventually, after 3 packets, bit the bullet and was like, come on now. Am I just doing this for the sake of it?
Tim Tams is one thing that I said I wanted to have post show, and I still haven't had one. Another thing was a Snickers bar. I've got a lot of eating to do. Fuck.
Yeah. I'm surprised you stored away, Tom, ready for you when you got home, like the top shelf. That's my post.
Nah, man, if that's in my pantry, I'm not sleeping because I'm staying up thinking about what's in my pantry.
Yeah, I'm glad you're like me. Nothing in there. I thought there were certain things she couldn't have in there, and she's everyone feels it around the house. I'm like, you cannot have that in the house, and if it is in the house, you're gonna know about it, or it needs to be hidden out of my sight.
Yep.
Sight out of mind. So everyone's in prep essentially is me in the house.
Oh, we're like that in the off season. We don't have any peanut butter in the house because it doesn't matter if it's off season or prep. That shit will get annihilated with me and Zoe around.
So I'm officially the odd one out, man. I used to like take Liz to food markets on the weekend.
I tried to know.
I've done,
and it was torture, and I hated every minute of it. Well,
that I can agree with, Dean. Like going out to different places, different environments, different markets. I kind of like that, but it's the in-home environment that gets me. Whenever I've prepped and where I've dieted in the past, it's always what's happening in my own 4 walls that I'm a bit more cautious of. Outside in the real world, if I walk past a nice bakery or something, I smell fresh bread. It's like, oh yeah, that's nice, but I don't really care. It's when it's here.
Yeah.
One thing I was very disappointed about was everyone told me it was spider season. Essentially, at somewhere in Australia, the entire time you're there, it will probably be some kind of spider season. I saw one spider, and it was probably about this big, and it was squashed on the floor because a Great Dane stood on it. Like, I was so let down by the lack of spiders. I thought there was going to be some huge fucking giant things running around. And
just have to get out in the bush a little bit, George. That's why you missed it, mate.
George was actually out like near Coomera, right? I think it was Coomera. No, Greenbank.
Greenbank, West Bris. So I was right on the outskirts of Brisbane. Like I backed onto a bit of a national park, and it was fucking beautiful. But again, like the shame was like if you're going to see spiders, it will be here, not a single one, apart from that tiny one.
Yeah, I was surprised. They would have been in the shed gym or whatever. But what about favorite place, George? Favorite place you visited?
I've got different opinions for different reasons. Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney all had different qualities, which made them quite good. I think Sydney was probably the worst, just because main city central was London with all the good bits taken away from it. So it was just business suits, very depressing, grey. Everyone was walking around with a miserable face. I was like, this is not a bit of me. But a short 20-minute ride from Alexandria to Cronulla, and it was just completely different. It was beautiful, scenic, lovely beach, walkway. So that kind of saved Sydney for me a bit, going out and spending some time out there with clients and stuff. Gyms are pretty cool in Sid. Brisbane was probably my favourite place just because of access to Gold Coast. Like I think Gold Coast is probably my favourite part of Oz. Like it literally to me is just like London, but in a better place with less shit and better weather, which is pretty cool. Melbourne had a bit more to do, I find. Like there was a lot more going on, and I was right in the city centre as well, so it meant I was touring around doing a lot more. So I'd say the weather was best in Brisbane. I'd say Melbourne was probably the best for stuff to do, but my favourite place was Goldie.
Yeah, mate, that's a pretty good rundown.
And there's a burger for anyone in Melbourne. I'll have to find the name of the restaurant so you can go hit it up. But they now have a challenge that's called the George Burger, because I went in there and ate their burger challenge in 3.5 minutes.
How did I not see this? How did I not know about this?
Well, I went I was waiting for my apartment in Melbourne, and I was like, shit, I've got like 4 hours, man. I'm fucking starving. I've not eaten all day. Like, it's just been shit. I'll just grab a burger. Cool, let's do it. I grabbed the biggest one on the menu, not thinking anything about it. Didn't realize it was a challenge. And he was looking at me really weird when he put it down. And I just started eating it, cracked on like normal. He come over at the end and was like, this big, like, oh my God, what the hell have you just done? And I'm like, just ate a burger, mate. Like, I could have probably done 2. And he then turned around and went, okay, well, sweet. Your thing's going up on the board, and now this one's a new one called the George, and it's 2 burgers, 2 large fries. It was only like 4 burgers in the 4 patties in the burger. It wasn't like it was fucking huge.
Only 4.
Only 4. How did you talking like this?
It was, yeah, okay. It was quite wide. Like, it was a big fucking circle, like proper bun like that, like 4 patties stacked through it. Like, you should really cut it in half.
Yeah, right. It's good effort.
There is a running.
But you didn't need to take one of the patties out to finish it. Like, it held its shape.
It was messy as fuck. Yeah, no, it weren't pretty. It went all over the place. Yeah, it was a big one.
This is one of my gripes with burgers, Tom. I think you're pandering to my preferences here. A burger that can't be eaten as a burger isn't a burger. It's just an Instagram photo. I'm like, if I have to pull this thing apart and eat it in pieces, what the fuck's the point?
Yeah, I stand by that.
Flipping out, falling everywhere, bread's going soft and like gooey.
And obviously, Dean knows how quickly I eat, so he can imagine what it looked like with a messy burger.
Yeah, for Tom
Dean,
and Matt,
you know about my jaw issues that I've had. If I'm eating a burger with 4 patties in it, I'm getting lockjaw and I'm not fucking closing my mouth. That's going to be a problem. So I just wouldn't touch it. I just wouldn't go for anything if I know I can't fit my mouth around it.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. Man could not finish burger due to lockjaw.
Fuck no.
Wouldn't do too well in prison. You wouldn't also do well in prison because of the size of those glutes, mate. No, there's a running joke with George because he eats very quickly. Now, for reference, post-comp UK, I got myself what did I get? I had I think a tub of ice cream and half of one of those like fat cookies. I shared a cookie with Joe. And we sat down, George sat down, and by the time that I'd maybe gotten through half of my Haagen-Dazs tub, George had already smacked his entire Haagen-Dazs tub and 6 cookies, not big ones, but small ones. And then we all look around and like Joe's a notorious slow eater. I eat, I think, at normal pace. And then George is just like holding this empty spoon, like, what? I've got a big mouth. And we all just lost it. We're like, it's not the size of your mouth, mate, that is the problem. It's the fact that you just inhale food.
George, do you make a conscious effort when you're prepping and you're dieting to slow down your eating?
I'd love to tell you yes, and I will 100% talk about good behaviors and good eating behaviors and food hygiene with all of my clients. But this is one of those cases where I'll hold my hands up happily and say I do not practice what I preach in this regard. I'm a man of efficiency. I know where the behavior comes from as well. So this is the thing. Like, it's not that I'm not aware of where it started from. I grew up in a household with 2, my dad and my brother, both older than me, both kind of alpha male mentality in the house. I'm not much different to them in that regard, and when we're around each other, it's not great. It's usually bad. But when the food went on the table, Dad and Michael, they'd plaster through so much. So from a young age, I was used to eating quickly and getting in fast, so I got my fair share. I know where it come from, but I don't want to change it, man. I like eating, and I like eating how I eat. I don't get digestive stress. I don't get gas. I don't get bloating. I don't get any backlash from it. So it's like, well, if there's no negative here, I don't see why I'm going to change.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But it helps in the off season, because in the off season, I can usually get through 7K calories in a day, and it's like, okay, yeah, it gets hard toward the end, but like, it's doable.
Yeah. Well, I find in your off season, you almost want to finish the food before you get a chance to feel full, and then it hits you, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, hit the food cover.
Yeah, see, I was a lucky child who always had seconds available. So I think I just used to enjoy it. You know, just take my moment and savor it. You know.
Yeah. I said enjoy it. My brain just works quicker.
So this is there's moments where you catch yourself always, right? You're eating something, you're like, oh my god, this is good. But then I'm always like, oh, I don't want to have FOMO of feeling like I rushed this, so I slow down. It's always like halfway through the meal, look. Hang on a minute, I need to slow down now. Or even Liz would attest to this. Like, there'll be moments where I'm like, oh fuck, where are we going? Like, we're leaving in 15 minutes. No, I won't eat. I'll just fast for the next 3 hours. And she's like, what the fuck? Like, you can get a meal in. I'm like, nope, I'm not rushing. I hate rushing my meals. I just want to sit down and enjoy my food. So I'd rather fast for the next 4 hours, and then I'll come home and eat what I want.
Yep. Fair enough.
Sweet up time with it.
But for those that aren't familiar with how the weekend went, and obviously, like I said, George was there in Australia. We just had an absolute cracker of a weekend on behalf of Flex with athletes. So I thought it would be pertinent to give a shout out to all of the crew. We had a pretty good crew there. I think it was about 13 or 14 people competing at once there. So I'm going to rattle off some names and some positions just to give everybody the shout out they deserve. So first, an honourable mention to Warren, Jaden Riggs and Ryan Allen, who competed and did very well in their respective categories. And then we had a whole bunch of podiums. We had George Montagny came third in the under-90s, which was a massive, massive improvement for him coming up from juniors. He'd competed in the under-90 before. He was like 4 or 5 kilos up in tissue and still got probably about that to go again before he taps something out, which will be awesome. Joshy Phillips crossed over from the WBFF. We were talking about the WBFF before we kicked this off, and he's come across from being a WBFF pro there and came second in his open debut, which was really cool. Matty Gall got second in the novice classic. We had Ryan Ackerman in the under 80s coming second to Dryden, who's a seasoned vet, absolutely nutty looking physique for a shorter guy. Crazy physique, actually, Dryden. He's been around for a long time. John Harsudis in the under 100s, or under 90, sorry. Then we had Dorney in the under 100s. Both of those guys took first. And then we had the honourable two in here. Matty taking first in the supers and then taking the overall for his pro card in the open men's bodybuilding. And Mr. Tom Stanley, you were classic A, I believe, taking first in there and then taking the overall in that one as well. So congratulations to everyone, and a special congratulations to you two boys, IFBB pros. Who would have thunk it?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's good.
So what, from the crowd's perspective, watching Matty's overall and seeing 3 flex clients up there, that was pretty cool, man. That was pretty cool seeing that three of your guys doing battling it out for the carb was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, I was pretty mad at Dryden for being so good, I was like, oh, I might be able to sneak an under 80s here as well. That would have been fucking absolutely nutty, And then it would have been even crazy because the under 70s guy didn't even show up.
Yeah.
Who was the under 70s guy?
I'm not sure, but because there's supposed to be 5 there, right? And I was like, oh, we've got 3 out of the 4. What's going on here? And I was like, oh, the 70s guy hasn't shown. But anyway, I mean, very unlikely to win as an under 70s guy in an overall, but it's happened before.
Yeah, I'd love to see that stood next to Matty, to be honest.
Oh. yeah.
The super. Whoa.
Giving up 40 kilos. That's like an entire human.
Literally.
But Matty, how did you feel about the win? Did you expect it? Did you, was that the goal?
It was, and it's like I've been asked that 1,000 times, and it's been hard to answer without sounding a little bit arrogant. And I don't ever want to sound arrogant whatsoever. But it was 2 years ago, Dean, that we set out to do that. I was already pro in another division, and I knew I was pretty much right up the very top of that division. 1 pro show, so I already acted and felt like I was a pro. So it was just a matter of time of making the switch to IFBB where I wanted to be, and essentially just getting my pro card there and seeing where I stood up. Knowing that we had a lot of work to do, but we comfortably did that. And I knew that in terms of looking at my physique from a bodybuilding fan, it was like very balanced. And I knew for someone to beat me, I'd have to be off, or that they just have to blow me away, really. So in saying that, though, the boys that I did compete against in the overall, my teammates, I was looking at them backstage because you can't see yourself. And I'm like, shit, man, I'm not as sharp as I need to be here. And this might really let me down. I'm looking at John, and in a non-gay way, he's bending over, picking, and you just see all the striations through his glutes. And like, Dean, you know how I am about that, how hard I tried to flog myself to get that in there, and it just didn't come. And I'm like, you know what, this may be what's going to undo me right here. I know I've got size, I know I've got reasonable shape, but the condition side of things, like it depends on what the judge and panel wanted. But yeah, in terms of my physique, I knew it was quite balanced. So I know a lot of bodybuilders struggle to have that. So that comes with time. But yeah, it was a nice feeling to get the win because it was a hell of a prep. I think I was more frustrated than ever during that prep. And Dean, you felt that. Just the way my body took forever to respond. It was still didn't respond as probably as well as I would have liked. And then trying to work out why. And then everyone's like, and Emily's like, you're stressed. You've got so much more on your plate now. You're trying to manage all this. I'm like, but I'm capable of it. I'm doing it. Like I do a lot as it is. It's quite normal for me. I don't feel stressed. But then the more I tried to work it out, the more I got frustrated with it. I'm like, this is not helping. So,
yeah,
right. There was even just a big shift, I think, in just the general tolerance to food for you, Matt, between Queenslands, and Nationals, which is probably a good indication that, you know, the cumulative effect of stress and what it can do to a physique initially. Because, you know, coming to Queensland's for you, that was the switch. That was the show, you know. I'm switching over. There's a lot of pressure internally on yourself to do very well. Once that relief came out, even for me, like how you went about your weeks between then, because there was, you know, a 2-week pause and then a 1-week peak for between then. Or I shouldn't say a 2-week pause, because you ended up grinding back in just as hard as prior. But a 2-week period of dieting again, 1 week of peaking. Just the outlook on how you went about that was significantly different. But yeah, finding the calm in the crazy is always, I think, the key to physiques adapting the way in which you wish that they will. And always a learning curve. So, but I think there's nothing wrong with being confident in your ability to do well. So I've never taken you as an arrogant person. I don't think anybody ever would. So I don't think you should have that fear of worrying about.
Yeah, it was just the way I've gone to answer it a few times to a few people, and I was just like, oh, I don't really want to sound that way, but that's generally how I felt. So, yeah.
There's always a fine line between confidence and arrogance, though.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what about you, Tom? How did you find that whole experience? Was this the expectation? Was it the goal? Did you think it was possible?
There's a lot of hype around the Classic overall as well. There was a lot of talk about it coming into it as well. So I'd imagine that probably created some element of some exterior pressure just from knowing it was pretty much in the whole community and crowd.
I think I had more expectations and pressure on myself pre-Perth than I had pre-Nationals, given my underwhelming performance at Perth. In hindsight, that was obviously a good thing, because it definitely took the pressure off me heading into Nationals, and I quite enjoyed and thrived in that underdog kind of role where, unfortunately for Dashi, everybody heaped all this pressure on him and everybody kind of just expected that he was going to win. And it was pretty cool, though, to see that in the overall, the top 3 guys were the same top 3 guys who competed in Perth. So it just goes to show how good a quality that show was. But I definitely took a lot of confidence when I came off stage after winning my open class and being told that it was quite a convincing win, and there was a bit of a gap between me and second and third. I was like, okay, maybe I'm on today. And then I had a lot of feedback from a few different people after I came off from the opens, and that gave me a lot of confidence. And yeah, I definitely believed that I could win it after obviously taking out the opens. But before that, my goal for the day was literally just win my open class, just be in that overall, see what happens. But yeah, I think once I got up there, obviously my posing was a little bit quicker. Dean, you mentioned that after the opens that, you know, I need to speed that up 10 to 15%. And I think I did that, and it made everything look a little bit more, I suppose, convincing, because I was hitting that pose probably a little bit quicker than the next guy. I was holding it. I remember to smile this time as well, and it probably looked like I was up there to win. Whereas, you know, in previous showings, I was a little bit hesitant with my posing, a little bit standoffish. So I'm definitely a better bodybuilder when I have a bit of confidence behind me.
Oh yeah, it makes the stage come across way more endearing and dominating on the stage. You can really own the stage with just how you come across and present yourself. And it starts with facial expression or certain power poses in how you strike your pose, essentially, rather than the actual pose itself.
Yeah, well, that's a very timely point, George, because I think it was Matty Orchard said this to me, or I heard him say it somewhere. It was like, man, Tom, the first time he came out, it took him about 15 seconds to get into his front pose because he's so fucking wide. But once he did, everyone was like, whoa, what was that? You know, like, so there's that setup.
Was that at Nationals?
At Nationals, just, you know how you do your front relax, you do your like kind of like, and then you kind of sink out, and then all of a sudden you go into the pose, and it's like, okay, so you could probably land a plane on the width of that dude's clavicles. This is retarded. And then the other one is that, like, I've had words with Lewis Perkett before about telling him, this is many years ago, about, dude, you just need to smile on stage. Like, you don't have to look like you're the happiest human in the world. It's not fake. You know, it's about presenting your physique that someone wants to look at. And someone like, I'm having fun. So like, what does it matter? I'm like, well, actually, you know, these things do matter, because
I physically can't smile with my teeth showing on stage. It just feels fucking weird. So I'll do like a little sea bump smirk. It'll be like a.
Yeah. I think like Maddie, you're actually very good on stage. Like
BFF boy coming out though.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit. If you can harness both of these, because Maddie, you like always in your first like 3 or 4 rounds of poses, you're just a little bit like you can see your amp build. You're like, it's the very super like, I'm getting better. And then there's a moment of like, holy fuck, if I don't breathe right now, I'm going to pass out. And then you get into this calm confidence, right? And I think that's what people need to realize. You need to command some form of attention, especially if you're in a very good lineup, because they're always looking for something that is not as good as the person next to you. And it could just be that little tweak of like standing there confidently where the other person just looks a bit deflated and unsure, that they go, oh, who was that again? And then they go, oh, he actually has better quads than I thought. Or, oh, he actually is far leaner than I thought. Or trying to hide in poses is the same too. You think you can hide, but when you hide, you just highlight. So it's an interesting outlook.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't get to see you obviously on stage, Tom. So we're backstage watching it on the live stream, and then when the boys come out the back to tell us that we're obviously seeing it in person, they're like, "Man, it was absolutely nutty to see his condition." Because we were planning on going out to watch you guys in the overall, but just didn't happen to be at that time. I was like, you know what, I'm comfortable. I'm going to sit here right now. And then exact words, one of the boys said, "You're a little bit slow in that front relax," and they reckon you were just like. Boom, and they said as soon as you opened up, I think it was Jay said it. He's like, mate, it's just so impressive. And then from the back, the glutes, how peeled you were, your condition. So I am gutted that I didn't go to see that myself in person.
It was nuts.
We'll just have to time the pro debut for both of you guys.
Sorry, what was that thing?
I was going to say, we just have to time the pro debut for you boys to be at some show together or something, just for that moment again. But yeah, what were we going to say, Tom?
Oh fuck! It's slipped my mind now. I don't even remember.
Must have been very surprised. I think you said you were surprised by the look.
Oh, yeah, I was just surprised by the look of my glutes as well. Like under that stage lighting, and after seeing a few photos, I was like, "What the fuck? That's pretty crazy." Like, there's nothing. There's literally no fat on those glutes. But in a way, it does kind of expose, like you've said to me, my upper back thickness does need to improve, because the contrast from the hardness of the lower body to the upper body is slightly exposed because I'm so shredded from the waist down. But we've got plenty of time to fix that up, so should be a good off season.
And a decent increase on the weight as well to play around.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
your boys, depending on if he again is going to get tall enough.
Hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Fucking hell. I was actually going to sell. I was going to sell my inversion table because somebody was talking to me about it yesterday, and I was about to offer it to him, and then I was like, you know what, I should probably keep this. I think I'll need this again.
Yeah, just
did it work, Tom? Like, what are your thoughts and feedback with the inversion table?
I think it works like up to, in my experience, it was probably like 0.5 of a centimeter increase, but I think you need to do it very frequently. Like if you smash it out 3 to 4 times a week for a month and then stop for a week, you've almost undone all of that good work. I just think, yeah, it's hard to say, but all I needed was a little bit, and as long as I got that little bit, that was enough. But
it's important for people listening to think like inversion tables aren't going to add inches to your height and help you get up into a height class you're not close to. It's just giving you that little notches on the spinal joints of compression over years just unleashed. And that's a small acute thing. Like I've always looked at it on any kind of stretching or stuff to try and make heights in a 24-hour window, more so than I can understand with inversion tables, potentially getting in a routine and pattern with it to keep it consistently there and see what you can get out of it. But again, it's a short-term thing. And the moment you go back onto having gravity work upon your weight, your compression on the spine is going to come back down again. So it's a very short-term thing, not like I can do this for the rest of my life and change my height or get anything more than a small percentage, right? So you've got to be close, not like within a couple of like centimeters distance.
Yeah.
I suppose it also depends on how compressed your spine is to begin with. I've always thought of myself as a pretty hypermobile kind of person, so I was always a little bit unsure as to whether or not it would help me a lot. But if maybe if your spine's super compressed and you're tight as fuck, then it's probably going to add, maybe an extra centimeter than someone else.
Yeah, it's certainly for cusp athletes. There's no question about that. Like you said, half a centimeter, and fairly acutely. Like we used it for Alex Connors. He managed to get himself into that little bit taller, So it certainly will be effective acutely if done repeatedly for about that amount. Because the other thing some people don't even realize too is like throughout a prep, as you lose fat and fluid, you lose fluid in those segments of the spine too. So you actually can get shorter. So it's just one of those things to sometimes offset that, again, if you're a cusp guy. But if you're smack bang in the middle, nothing's going to happen. You're just going to have to deal with
it. When you told that to me that I could actually get shorter, I was like, fuck, please, please don't happen to me. I can't afford to get shorter.
We need to be able to site specifically lose fat from everywhere, but not the bottom of the feet. Keep the foot fat pad so that you can still keep height and you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, do you know what Hannah said to me? This was one trick that we were going to do, was she was just going to whack me over the head and just give me a big bruise on the top of my head, and that would help, I was like,
go ahead.
It's not a terrible idea. It's surprising that no one has suggested this yet, but yeah, I'd rather not.
One of the lucky things in not having that was actually, this is one of the things that I still find the most interesting, but also the most challenging as a coach is weight class clients that are on the cusp, and then also classic guys that are on the cusp, trying to manage peak weeks in the presence of weight categories. Someone like you, Matt, fuck, you make my life so nice and easy in that instance. It's just like, guess what? He just comes in as best as we can bring him. Like, you don't have to worry. It's such a nice. Imagine having that added stress, Matty, if you're like, I need to get peeled, but I also need to get full, but I need to be 101.9. Like, poor bloody Jaden. Jaden Riggs absolutely got annihilated for both of his peak weeks to make weight. A shout out to actually Joe, or Jojo. I call him Jojo because I have too many Joes in my life. He calls himself Jojo too, actually, who just went and did the Arnold's IFBB Elite, his pro debut this year, and he got third there, which was really fucking cool. How's this, right? So 24 hours out from the weigh-in, thankfully he is allowed 2 days. He was on 400 grams of total food weight.
Ooh.
Yeah, for the day. And then I had his water stop going in at 6 p.m. for an 11 a.m. weigh-in. We got to 11. He hadn't lost enough. He's in Dubai, so he then put a tracksuit on and walked an hour and 20 minutes in 42-degree heat to lose 600 grams to then make weight. So he'd basically been fasted for over 24 hours nearly, and he'd only had 400 grams of food the next day, and he hadn't had fluids for like 16 to 20 hours, walked in the heat for an hour and a half, made weight, somehow still looked all right when he got on stage.
Was his show the day following the check-in?
No, thankfully the IFBB Elite are quite unusual. They give you the option to check in from Thursday till show morning.
Okay.
So you can show up to the athlete meeting. You can show up to the athlete meeting and just height, weight, get on stage, or you can show up 2 days earlier and make it, and then do whatever it is you want to do between then and the show day. A very unusual setup.
Yeah, right. That is different.
But yeah, like it's. If I was a guy who was making weight easily, I'd be mad, because you could have somebody cut down and then come up massive, which he absolutely outmuscled the absolute piss out of everyone in that show. It's just, for him, it's just a Christmas thing. He's just got to figure out how to get, again, that little bit off, just to make him that little bit crisper. So, that's the fun of it. But Matty, how did you find the whole experience, like peak week versus in Queensland versus nationals, or was there any variability between the two shows that you found any major difference from, or just generally speaking?
No, I think it was just a lot more relaxed for nationals. Just like you said, I had a lot of pressure, mostly all pressure for myself for Queensland, and it's made it more difficult. And once I got that out of the way, and I knew the peak worked and everything was good, it was just head down, bum up, to come in a little bit tighter for nationals. And we pretty much copied the exact same approach, really. There wasn't any changes. So I knew that it was going to work. I just knew I was going to be improved as well from Queensland, which made me relax even more.
And you, Tom?
I much preferred the peak week in Brisbane, because I was essentially treating it as if it was a holiday, and it was very, very cruisy. And I think, same as Matt, like, it was more or less the same type of peak There was a couple of minor changes, but it was very, very similar. Although one thing I was thankful for is that you removed rice cakes because they're just so fucking tedious and annoying to eat. And I was just having a lot of cereal, and you know how much I love cereal. So, other than that, though, I don't actually think we did a hell of a lot differently from Perth to Brisbane. I had a lot of people saying, like, what was the difference between Perth and Nationals? You look so much better. And I was like, honestly, 80% of it is probably just the oil and the pump up because my weight was almost identical. The peak was almost identical. It was a very, very similar peak. And yeah, it's crazy what happens when you get oil on, you get a pump up and you get a bit of confidence, and the physique just came to life and everything just went perfectly to plan. So much prefer Brisbane, obviously.
Yeah. Tom, you were definitely like a margin sharper for the same level of probably relative fullness, if not a bit fuller. So your peak, the only difference that would happen between, so for people who are listening, Tom was an interesting case in that he had Perth, which was 4 weeks prior to the Nationals. So there was a period there where basically we came out of Nationals and went back to maintenance for an entire week. And like you started dropping weight pretty comfortably there, which was, fun. And then it was like essentially like a 2-week toggle of eating a little bit less and then refueling, and eating a little bit less and then refueling, so that we could just get that last little bit off, just to get you to that level. Because we knew up against Dashy, he's a guy of detail, incredible detail and separation between all of his muscle bellies, lots of muscle fiber sort of showing. So for you, is like just that little bit extra so that we could then load you that little bit more. And I think the only difference in your peak, Tom, was that we had the opportunity to actually just bring fats in a little bit at one stage in preparation for the load, whereas for Perth, we didn't bring as many fats in across as many days, but it was essentially the same, just a little bit more carbs.
I think fats were like maybe 10 to 15 grams higher, and my calories were a little bit higher. I think overall, like ever so slightly as a result of that. But I also found as well that 2 to 3 week period in between shows, I was eating more food than I was previously, but I was still dropping weight, which was pretty cool because I was cruising on like, what was it, 2,500 calories 5 days a week or 6 days a week with one refeed day, and I was still dropping weight. And you asked me this as well. You're like, are you surprised how how it's like seamless this transition's been, between shows? And it was very cruisy. It was a little easier than I thought it was going to be because I was dreading that 4-week period in between the two shows. I was like, fuck, 4 weeks is a nightmare. But yeah, looking back at it, it was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So lucky.
Yeah, Matt, block your ears to this, but Tom also had one meal a week where he could accurately track one out for that 3-week period too. The dirty bastard. Yeah. But he does very typical, like, he went out for like some chicken and rice, like, it wasn't really any, but it's just the mental break from
he went and ate the same food just cooked by someone else.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. On Saturday, I had the chance to catch up with two of my friends. For lunch, I go out for like this Viet-style chicken and rice. It's literally poached chicken, rice with like a whole bunch of different veg and some nook mum, And then I go out for dinner and it's Chinese chicken rice with a bit of soup on the side. And I was like, fucking hell, I've gone out for 2 meals today and they've both just been different variations of chicken and rice. How much do I love chicken and rice?
Well, so I would go out for Turkish. I would go out for chicken shish and rice, like post-com. It's just so good.
Yep. I'm pretty sure that's what you did, wasn't it? We went up to the one near Joe's.
Both times. Yeah, tuck in. Both times I've finished my comps, I've gone for chicken shish. But the difference is you get a little bit of bread on the side and a nice little dip,
Ugh. Carbs on carbs. How good is it?
But and Maddie, you're, like you said, man, we were actually quite lucky with both of you. Your peak was one and the same, just more carbs again too. We had the opportunity to load you a lot harder this time. Because actually, interestingly for you, and I think this is actually a testament to the discussion we had earlier about the impact that stress can have on a physique as well. That first peak we did when we introduced carbohydrates, your weight escalated a lot faster and a lot quicker. Mm-hmm. So the capacity to load you wasn't as high because there was a bit of a tentative push there. Like, are we going to be able to get this back? And then Matt is also one of probably a handful of people that I work with currently and have even worked with in totality that has a huge flux in fluid balance, massive. We're talking 3 and 4 kilos of fluid coming off the night before a show versus some people it doesn't even move half a kilo. So there was always a tentative push on the first one, and like making sure crispness was very, very much the case there. And then that was achieved. And then the next one, we ended up getting a decent carbohydrate load in one night where you actually went to bed legitimately full, mate. So
yeah, no, that was a nice feeling.
How many grams of carbs was it on that night? Sorry.
Just bordering on 1,200, I think, from memory.
That's across the whole, across them 2 days, yeah? That night?
No, because one of them was originally going to be a 900 and ended up shifting up over to the 1,000. So I think it was like 1,125 or something like that, you know?
That was that night. I forgot about that. And he's like, how are you feeling? Where are you up to? And I was literally I was already running late. We had heaps of business stuff on that day. I'm like, fuck, I've been excited for this all day to get this food in. And my meal timing's just been put out. So I'm sitting there just about to get stuck into it. And Dean's like, wait, don't have that meal yet. Let me adjust. And then he's like, and then on top of that, you're going to have another bowl of cereal just before bed. And I had the smile on my face. I remember Emily going, what's happened? And I'm like, I'm getting more food. Wait for this. But I had to push it in quite quickly over, like, I think that would have been like 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the afternoon when that happened. So I ended up going to bed at like 10:30, but I was very full and very satisfied.
I had the same thing. I think, Dean, you did something similar to me where I had like a large carb meal, and then you said like add in an extra 100 grams of cereal or whatever it was. And I was like, fuck yes, let's go.
Yeah, and it's cereal. You're like, fuck, this is awesome. Give it to me.
Oh, I love cereal.
Cocoa bombs.
If any of my guys that listen to this podcast when it's out, Dean, they're all gonna be sat there thinking, fuck, do you guys all just do the same thing? The amount of cereal that got deployed on peak weeks was nuts.
Well, George, why do you use cereal?
Because it's fucking great. It's a high glycemic food. It's easy to digest. It's relatively easy access, and I don't see many people that ever have GI issues with it. It's like, fuck, let's roll. And it's lightweight as well. So if you are worried about weight, you can usually get quite a large degree of carbohydrate volume for little actual food mass.
Yeah. Whereas if you use like a cream of rice, you're chowing down like half a kilo to a kilo of food volume just there. So
weight in it,
and accounting for fluid.
Yeah.
I mean, jokes aside, this is one of the reasons why I use that. Actually, Matty, you and I had a really good conversation about choosing carb sources that's probably worth discussing for people. And that was, I think I said to you, like, at one stage I'd given Matty like X amount of rice cakes and X amount of jam. And he's like, mate, you're giving me way too little jam for these amount of rice cakes. I'm like, so eat some rice cakes dry, like, and then have some jam on the ones that you want, you know? And like choosing carbohydrate sources, it is relatively simple, but there are some considerations for it. So like when I'm putting a certain amount of jam in for an individual, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's because there's some simple sugars in there that are low volume, easy to get in, that makes the rice cake go down quicker. But also like jam is typically like a sucrose, which is like partially fructose and then partially glucose. So it's playing the like fruit sugar component of a carb load that I would otherwise get from fruit, but then that has to come with it the considerations of fiber. You know, so like sometimes I'll use jam to provide the fructose component of that load, and I'm usually like aiming somewhere in the sort of like 20-ish grams of carbohydrates coming from that to go alongside glucose, because those together as a co-shuttle are far better at restoring glycogen than you are doing it in isolation of just a starch. So like picking things like this is smart, and then the great thing about cereal is it's usually like pretty electrolyte neutral too. So like if I've got somebody on a certain amount of salt and a certain amount of fruit and vegetables, the potassiums and all this sort of jazz, and then I'm like, oh, Matty can still handle more food, the easiest solution is just to dump in a bunch of cereal and eat it like popcorn, because it's electrolyte neutral, it's pretty much just carbohydrates, there's no additional fats, the fiber's low, it's easy to digest, and like I said, also George, it's low volume. So by the time you've actually chewed it and got it down, it's not taking up much space in the GI. So there are reasons why people will choose things. I'm yet to come up with a viable reason other than sheer enjoyment for a muffin.
Yeah,
but they exist in the world. In saying that too, though, there is an argument for show day. Like, so I know some people that do like chocolate bars pre-stage, and you think like, what's a chocolate bar doing for somebody pre-stage? I'd argue physically or physiologically, probably fuck all. But the fact that if you think about, you've dieted for X amount of weeks, and then you get to kick back and just chew on a chocolate bar before you go out to stage, and it brings that enjoyment, then have at it, man. If that's the underwork for you, then go for it.
Lit.
Yeah, exactly, man. Endorphin, you're just enjoying it.
Yeah,
100%.
While we're on this, well, I've got to bring this up. I'm not sure if you've seen on the stories, Dean. The lollies. I'm not a big lolly man. I'll never eat. Very rarely will I ever eat lollies. And Dean's like, we'll have lollies. Queensland, we did it. And I'm like, and the boys were trying to feed me more. And I'm like, I'm just going to chew on a few. And they're like, no, Dean said, get 100 grams in. And I'm like, I'm done on the lollies. I've been just having a few. Give me the Gatorade. And then I'm not sure if you're there, George, for Nationals. We had the lollies backstage. And then I'm sitting there. We're starting to get cool to go to pump up. And I'm like, my stomach. And I'm like, I was tight. Like the whole day we were sitting there. And I'm like, I could just kept feeling my midsection and lifting up and then go out of the piss. I'm like, that is so fucking crispy and tight. Like I haven't seen my midsection like that. So I was excited. And then we kept getting pushed back in time. And I'm like, please, I need to hold on to this. I need to hold this look. And then my belly just started to distend and feel like this pressure. I'm like, the fuck is going on? I stood up. I'm walking around. The boy's like, what? And I'm like, no, nothing. And then I'm sitting there. I'm like, what's going on? Is it a cramp? And then we're getting up backstage to pump up. And Em's like, what's wrong? I'm like, something is wrong, something. I'm like, who the fuck got them lollies? Were they gluten-free? And she's like, I got them. They're gluten-free, babe. They're the same lollies. I'm like, they're not. And she's like, it's nerves. And I'm like, I'm not fucking nervous. I don't get nervous. Like, I'm not. I'm like, I know what nerves are. This isn't nerves. And like, I'm trying to like vacuum, trying to pull it in. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, not now. And all the boys like, it's just nerves, man. Just relax. It's all good. Everyone gets nerves. And anyway, to cut the story short, got on stage. It was so uncomfortable. I was so upset. I'm trying to hold my midsection in. Emily trains on Monday. She used the rest of them lollies to go train. She was using intra-workout, and her guts were fucked. And I was like, I fucking told you. And she's like, the whole time you're telling me, it's okay, just pull it in. There's nothing you can do about it now. That feeling, you're sitting, walking around the house. I had to be on stage in the biggest show they've been working for 2 years for. So I'm like, eat shit. And I don't know what it was.
What were they?
She got him. You'd have to ask her. She's just like, I can't believe how much it upset her gut. And I'm more sensitive to it than, I don't know what it was in it. Like
I wonder if they're sugar-free ones and they're just like maltitol.
So there's some kind of sugar-free alternative.
Sugar alcohol.
Yeah. So I will never do lollies ever again in the carb up for our future. I will not take.
You need to go find like a different packet of lollies and just test that it's not. You're not just allergic to lollies in general.
Alan jelly snakes.
Alan's jellies are good.
Can't beat them.
Yeah, I can't remember what's in the lollies. There's a particular ingredient does set a lot of people off. That it's not the sucralose, it's something else. I'll have to ask Emily. It's. She said it wasn't. She's like, trust me, I made sure they're gluten free. They're all good to go. But again, I'll never run that risk going into a show.
Is there gelatin in lollies?
Yeah. There can also be glycerin in lollies too, but glycerin would be more likely to make you shit yourself than it would to make you bloat. But you'd also have to eat a lot of it. And glycerin's usually only found in like the chews, like the Starburst chew. They almost have like that sort of like oily residue to them, and that's a glycerin-based lolly. I only say this because Jaden once, I was like, yeah, man, I ended up having to like give him a bunch to give him like a whole bunch of carbs at very low volume. And then he told me, oh, yeah, man, I used Starburst chews. They were delicious. And I'm like, man, you would have put through, like, I think they're like 10% fat. Like, you'd never think that a lolly is got fat in it. But, Matty, for reference, I'm not a fan of lollies either. I think they're pretty lame. I'm not a sweets guy, but they suit the purpose when, used for that time frame too, just to get a little bit of carb and sugar in that's low volume so someone doesn't have to worry about it. Easy to eat. Don't have to worry about getting crumbs in your beard so you still present well, But yeah. I'm a rice.
Well, they had those.
I could eat that shit for days.
They had those red sour strips backstage, so I had a few of those between opens and overalls.
They were good.
And I did end up getting because there's like this sugary shit on the outside of them, and it did end up in my beard. And I was like looking in the mirror, like trying to clean up my beard. I was like, fuck's sake.
One thing a lot of people making a mistake with the lolly front, reaching for the Sour Patch Kids and the sour lollies. Come on, man. You want to fuck your digestion up? Yeah, let's throw something with really high pH balance going the opposite direction into your gut. Let's really blow out that GI and gut microbiome with some nice sour dust on top of your sweets. So,
yeah, you know what? Do you know why I think people do that too, George? I think people associate sourness with saltiness. I don't know why, but when you look at the actual sodium content of these lollies, they're fuck all. Similarly, you see people like smacking salt and vinegar chips backstage and end up with like their mouths all ulcered up because they haven't had anything like that for a long time. it's the same. When you look at the salt, you actually look at the sodium in them, they're dick all. They're not the thing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Just the
actually,
vinegar
one of the
that
best
they
things.
think is
Yeah, there's a drink that's in Turkey. I can't remember what the name of it, but it's a like a red turnip juice. If anybody ever wanted something to fucking have backstage, that would be it, because there's like 1.5 grams of sodium per drink. They're like a 300 ml. It is like make your eyes water, salty. But anyway,
sounds disgusting.
It's interesting. What's next, boys? The question that I'm sure both of you are annoyed at being asked 1,000 times over. I said this joke to Matt too. It's like when you finally get a girlfriend of the long term, the next question is, when are you getting married? Then you get married. Like, so when are you having kids? You're like, how's about you just let me enjoy being married for a second? So to be that family member, what's next, Matty?
Well, we're straight into it, Dean. We didn't muck around. 2025 Pro Show. We're looking to get on stage in May, depending on obviously dates when they announce them. But that is the goal, to get over there and try and do 2 shows. So hopefully New York Pro will be my goal, and I think the West Coast Classic, which is generally pretty close together, maybe 1 to 2 weeks apart, depending again when they put them dates on. But that allows me enough time to make some changes necessary in order to be competitive.
Yeah,
I'm
very excited.
It's funny how Dean mapped it out straight away for us, and it's you think about it and you're like, oh, May 2025, that's down there, and obviously we need that time to make them changes. But then as soon as you like Dean forecasts it, maps it out, and you're like, man, that really isn't that long. And then it just really drives that focus where I can narrow in and just be like, right, this next 12 weeks, that's the plan. From there, it's 4 to 6 weeks there, and then it's another 12 weeks. I can't afford to miss a beat, or I'm going to fall behind and waste time, as opposed to just getting complacent, going, oh, I've got time, we'll plan this, we'll do that. I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes. They underestimate how on point you need to be in an off season or an improvement season, depending on how you want to word it, to maximize your results or your progress.
Yeah, a massive shout out to actually Alex Connors and Ethan Gohari on this, because they're 2 guys that I've worked with for quite some time now, but they're 2 guys that are very much of that mindset as well. And even, Cam, from when he got his pro card to now, it's the same thing. It's like having the capacity to forecast and go, like, when is it actually possible that I might compete? Oh shit. So even if I say I compete in 18 months, I've really only got like fucking 30 weeks of available growth. It's not that much time. So we haven't done that for Tommy Boy just yet, because we're in just chill zone for now. But we haven't actually even discussed this, Tom. So I'm interested to hear where you're at with regards to your thoughts on next. The cool thing I've actually about you, Tom, is I think, like you said this earlier, is that you're more of I'm going to focus on what the next goal is. So if the next goal for you, like when we set out for this nationals, it was never even a discussion of trying to get the pro card. It was, again, just bringing Tom in far better than what he was last time. And then that eventuated. And now it'll be similar. Like, all right, well, now he's got this amount of weight. But Tom, where's the head at, mate? It's only been a week.
Not a bad problem to have. Well, accidentally got a pro card.
I'm pretty locked into the idea of 2025. And when Matty was talking about the shows in May, I was like, okay, that's an idea. New York Pro, I didn't realize it was in May. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lock anything in now, but I was thinking early to mid 2025. I have a lot of commitments locked in for next year, so that more or less rules out the possibility of jumping up on stage next year. So, and I think I need a full 12 months of growing to really be, hopefully competitive on the pro stage anyway. So, yeah, America 2025, we'll lightly pencil that one in and make a more informed decision when we actually talk about it, Dean, because we haven't had the chance to do that just yet. But yeah, your boy needs to grow bigger arms and a thicker back and a thicker chest. So literally just everything except for my glutes and my delts probably need to grow.
But it's a similar time frame actually between last show to this show. So, and we know what you're capable of for that. So I think it's an appropriate time. I really like the 18-monther. I think it's like a really nice zone.
Yeah,
me too. And I think we added about 5 to 6 kilo of stage weight between that period last time, and then obviously this time we're allowed about the same. So It's just going to be important that we're adding that weight onto the necessary muscle groups and not just getting a fatter ass, basically.
Then there's also the maturity factor too, because you're only a young buck, Tom, so we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 28. I'm not that young.
You are what he turns.
George is the young buck here then for this one.
Seriously though, like because a lot of people ask me like, if you didn't take it out last weekend, would you have done season A? And I've said this to so many different people. Although I didn't have the expectation of winning or earning my pro card, I should say, in the back of my mind, I was like, fuck, if it doesn't happen this season, I don't know when the next opportunity will be for me to jump up on stage. Like I probably would have to be waiting until 2025. And not that I'm getting old, but I was like, I'm going to be 30 by then. And then it's like, in my head, I'm kind of one that wants to be retired from bodybuilding by mid-30s. So it's like 30, 31. It's like, fuck, I'm almost ready to retire now. So it's like, time does get away from you very quickly. Like you just said, you have an 18-month off season, which is really, in theory, it's 12 months of off season, and then it's about a 6-month prep. So it's not a long time. And like you say, you do have to make the most of that off season and take it seriously.
Absolutely. Time flies, man. When you're locked in on the goal like that, dude, like weeks by week by week, especially when we're so adamant about being process focused too. Because if you just focusing on ticking off those dailies and then the weeklies and then the monthlies, you're like for me as a coach, it's essentially what I do as a coach too. Like I'm looking at like all of these little bits and pieces, like each individual's phase being ticked off, and then before and I'm like, holy fuck, we're 12 weeks out again. What? Hang on a minute, it's October. I've been away for like what? Where am I? Like what's going on? So, but final words at all? Any questions, queries, boys?
No, I just think it was extremely successful, or another extremely successful season for Flex Success. In particular, you, Dean. As I messaged you and told you that as well, mate. Everyone was speaking very highly of you and your abilities as a coach here in Australia. That you obviously weren't around to hear or to get them accolades from everyone here in Australia. So I'm sure, George, you would have heard it a lot, mate, backstage there at Nationals.
Yeah, it was nice to get my name out there in the Oz space finally, rather than be the guy on the screen. I'd definitely like to be out there. That's the next one.
Yeah, no, it was incredibly fucking cool to have George there on behalf of us. I must say. So George, thank you for going out. Not that we requested that of you at all. That was an endeavor of your own. You wanted to be out there. That was all on his own back. And he was at every show that he could get to. And the feedback's been terrible. Everyone said he was an absolute cock. But they said, Dean, you've gotten taller, but somehow uglier. Like what's happened? And then I just said, look, it's because I eat so fast. I'm aging much quicker. And here we are. So no, thank you, Matty. I appreciate the kind words.
No, that's all true.
Shall we wrap this up with some fun, as we always do?
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard this new one.
No, you haven't. I did originally throw in a would you rather to a group chat between Liz, myself, and George. It was a little too PG, so I've come up with a better one. But first and foremost, as we always do at the end of this podcast, because the podcast tagline is how to be less shit, we're going to ask everyone for a quick be less shit tip on be less shit bodybuilder in regards to prepping, peaking, whatever it may be. Tom, what's your be less shit tip?
My be less shit tip is to tell your coach when you have cheated on your diet or gone off plan and binged. I hear a lot of stories about even just mates of mine as well. And it happened to me once in my prep as well, where I went off and fucking smashed an extra 100 grams of cereal or whatever it was. And I told you about it. But yeah, a lot of guys will cheat on their diets and not tell their coach and then try and do extra cardio or try and do this and that to try and make up for it. And you just end up on two completely, different pages. So that's my tip is just tell your coach when you fucked up, basically.
Yeah, and let's say if your coach is a cock about it, he's a cock or she's a cock. Almost in every situation that I've ever been caught out as a coach where the client has had more food, there's been unless it's absolutely necessary because timing is an issue, it's usually like, cool, man, back to the plan tomorrow. It's never like, all right, well, you need to go do 15,000 calories worth of fucking walking now, and you also then obviously have the stress come off you as an individual, worrying about what the potential repercussions are. So very good tip.
Well, I think if you roast the fuck out of somebody as well, it just means that they're probably going to be less likely to tell you when it happens again, because they're going to be scared.
Yeah, it won't change the likelihood of the event happening, just their response.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a friend of mine once not cheat on his diet, but rather he switched steak for breakfast for bacon for breakfast on Christmas morning. And he just told his coach at the time, just like off cuff, like, oh yeah, man, it was cool. Like, I had some bacon. And he was like, you fucking what? You pussy, like, blah, blah, and just roasted him for it. And he was like, okay, wanker, and then just fired him. I was like, all right, like, if this is how it's going to be, see you later, bud.
Oh, great coach.
Yeah. Matty B, less shit tip for everyone listening.
Man, I'll keep it really simple as well. Micronutrient intake. And I say this because there'll be a lot of young aspiring bodybuilders out there watching YouTube all the time. And I'm sure all of you watching some of the big names, watching their YouTube, especially Dana Plate, fuck all micronutrients being consumed. And I will put my hand up before joining Flex Success, especially in the off season. I would get very slack on that side of things, cutting corners just because the sheer amount of food that we're consuming. And obviously that goes against what we're trying to achieve. So when we're trying to drive digestive motility. So that's been a big change and big improvement for myself. Even Emily, there was a period maybe 4 weeks ago, I was watching her getting slack with her in particular vegetables. And it's funny, I mentioned it to her, and it was probably a week later, she was starting to have digestive issues and really struggle and get that food in. And sometimes we don't like pulling each other up, but I had to bring it up. And I'm like, and then I think, Dean, it was the following week you put it on your stories and you're talking about, I'm not sure who asked the question. And I had to cheekily send that through to her. I'm like, there's your issue, just to highlight it, why you're struggling just right now to get that food in. So, but yeah, it doesn't matter who you watch at the moment in terms of YouTube, Dana Plate, it's next to no fruit and veg being consumed. Yeah. And I know we've spoken about that a few times, Dean.
Yeah, willing to do all of the gut shakes in the morning, but not willing to eat any fiber that will actually help shift anything. It's fucking hilarious. I get a diet from someone like, I had 50 grams of spinach in this meal. I'm like, and that's it. They're like, yep. I'm like, all right, cool.
I actually found
spinach. Like, not quite.
I was going to say my gut health this prep was the best that it's ever been, and it's the most regular I've been consuming things like pickled ginger, kimchi, and like pickled cucumbers as well. And I'm not sure how much I can attribute my improved gut health to those specific foods, but I know that since obviously starting up with Dean, eating way more fruits and veggies, my stomach has been a hell of a lot better.
Like way more.
Great leadership too.
Same.
They're more satiating too. You get to have a lot of vegetables. You actually feel full.
Yeah, and pickles are elite.
In the words of Liz, who doesn't like vegetables? Like, are you 5? Grow up.
Yeah.
I will say, in your off season, it's difficult. Sorry.
No, that is true, and there are some strategies, to get through that, but that's what you have to pay us for. So,
yeah,
that's what a blender's for.
Yeah, my be less shit tip for clients, or say clients, any individual backstage, any athlete backstage. I think we can create our own worst nightmare behind the scenes, and stress usually on show day comes internally rather than externally. Of course, it can come from external sources, but usually we're the ones creating that internal stress. And one thing I did notice a lot of athletes doing in Oz was asking a lot of opinions. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a few trusted individuals in your corner that you have been along for the long time. They've seen you the whole prep. They've been there. They've watched it transition, and who you validate the opinion and trust the opinion of. That is cool. But a lot of first timers, a lot of people new in the sport are coming up to random people that they maybe don't even know. And I experienced this, for some reason, George at Flex carries some weight and they wanted to know my opinion. Same thing I told them. It's better off not having my opinion because I know nothing about you. I know none of the data. I know nothing that can help me give you an actual answer that's going to help you in context right now. Best thing for any athlete to do is to trust in their coach on that day. Whether or not he's making the right call or not is irrespective. If you just follow that instruction to the letter, you are reducing the opportunity of stress there. After the fact, you can then look in hindsight and see if things could have been done more appropriately. But by second guessing that decision on the day, you're instantly creating a negative environment. And it, again, if you ask some randomer who you don't know, they might be an arsehole and turn around and tell you, look, shit. Well, on show day, great. That's the last thing you want to hear right before you go on stage. It doesn't matter whether it was a true comment or not. It's going to throw your head off. Stop looking too far for the external validation. Just stick with your guy, stick with your coach or whoever it is, and trust in their process on the day.
Massive one. Too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say. Isn't it? Chefs in the kitchen, cooks in the kitchen.
Too many chiefs and South Indians.
Yes. And as always, we always finish with a something worth sharing as well. Let's go reverse order. Do you have something worth sharing at all, Georgie? If not, we'll kick to the boys because I know I've already asked them before this.
Stick with them too.
All right. Tommy, you can wrap it. You can go first this time, and then Maddie can come in.
Well, my thing that I was going to share was actually very similar to what George has just discussed then, which was in relation to pressure and expectation and whatnot. And I was chatting to one of my mates about this today, and he's applying a lot of pressure on himself with the upcoming season. And I just asked him, like, does applying more pressure on yourself help your situation? Like, are you going to be a better bodybuilder by applying more and more pressure on yourself, or do you think that you're going to respond better by trying to take that pressure off? So just having that awareness of yourself as a bodybuilder or as a competitor, and just figuring out if you are someone that thrives better under pressure, or if you like just to take the back seat and just chill a little bit and just trust the process a bit more. I know for me, like when I internalize all that pressure and apply it onto myself, and it just kind of compounds, and it doesn't do any wonders at all for my physique. Whereas I know for some that they probably respond better under high pressure situations. So just have that awareness as an athlete. What kind of athlete are you? Are you going to be better when you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, or do you need to take some of that pressure off and just try and chill a little bit more in that prep?
Yeah, Liz is very, very, very good at this, and it is part of an education piece that we have with some of our clients. But a strategy that they can use in that instance is a thing known as unhooking. I think this is the appropriate one, but it's a lot of people will say, like, I am this, and they align their thoughts with who they believe themselves to be, and then that internalizes even more pressure. Whereas you can somewhat unhook that, and just the simple shift of language of, not, instead of saying like, I am a failure because I cheated, or I am hungry. You can say my body is feeling like I am hungry, and you can unhook away from associating your personal like self with the thought, and that will go a long way in taking some of that pressure off too. I think I didn't butcher that.
No,
it sounded
like
right.
I worked through.
Yeah, Maddie.
I think for me, and something I lent on, or during this prep, during the tough times, because it was a tough one for me, was Alex Samozi. I listened to him a lot. I'm not sure if this is his saying, but it was when I was hurting, especially doing cardio and dragging my ass around the days I really didn't feel like it. It was like, this is where everyone stops. So, and this is how you separate yourself in terms of winning and being successful. Is when it gets hard and you're really hurting, remind yourself this is where everyone stops. So just keep going, and they're getting closer to the success that you're trying to achieve.
Yep. So that's a big one.
Yeah.
I most of my guys would have heard me say probably at like 6 weeks out, this is where 90% of your competitors will get to. Now you have a choice to determine whether or not you make it into the final 10%, the elite tier. Because it is like lots of people can get to 6 and 7 weeks out condition. Not many go beyond there. And I think like testing yourself occasionally with mental fortitude and exposing yourself to difficult decisions is sometimes maybe not the best time to do it, is back into prep when you're like a little bit, less likely to be able to handle it. But even just in outside of it, like people doing all this ice bath shit and all that sort of stuff, like take away any of the potential considerations that it may afford them from an inflammation thing. Maybe it's the mental challenge. I know when I used to play football, I used to do weird things like I would want to do a 2-kilometer run, but I would make it so that the last 500 meters I had to go past my house, because then I'd have this moment of like, I'm going to stop, get to the house. No, this is when everybody else would stop. Run the extra 500 meters. It's the exact same mantra, Matty. It's a great one. I love it.
Yeah, I like it. Absolutely.
Imagine getting that prep talk fucking coming into comp from Dean. Oh, that's enough to light my fucking soul up a little bit. Oh,
yeah, I had a few. Don't worry, it helped as well. Dean, you know that it's a couple of times.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is sorry, Matty, continue. My apologies.
No, you're right. I was just saying, there's a couple of times I needed that prep talk from Dean to keep me going.
Well, and it's also like for the coaches that are listening, is like trying to figure out the psyche of each individual client is the biggest thing. Like, I don't think, you know, Matt and I have definitely had some, like, what I could tell from back and forth conversations are a little bit more like abrasive. Like, that's just how we would go about it. But I know that Matt and I can do that, and it's okay. I don't think I've ever had an abrasive conversation with you, Tom. Like, we just don't have that sort of connection of how we go about coaching. It's usually just generally very much like question, answer, conversation, matter of fact. We're on.
It's funny because I'll send you something
a bit more.
Well, I might say something that I will consider to be slightly abrasive, but maybe you just haven't perceived it that way. Like, not to the point where I'm like arguing with you, but I might say, I might just ask further questions to kind of clarify why you're doing it a certain way. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I hope he doesn't think I'm disagreeing with him. I just need further clarification. But no, I pretty much trust, I trust in you, and you probably know if I don't. Like, I'll probably ask a few more questions and be like, oh, I don't know, I'm unsure about this. But yeah, I usually just let you do what you need to do and just follow it. Like, usually works all right.
He even went for the coffee enema. Can you guys believe it?
The what?
Yeah.
The coffee enema. I said he needed to do a coffee enema to get peeled, to get walnut glutes, and he's like, I'm down. No questions asked. Yeah. No, but this is my point though, Tom, is like, your personality is different to Matt's, and then Matt's is very different to John's. Like, John Harsudas, I've had very like solid conversations around like giving himself some self-love, because like he's very critical, which is a fantastic trait of his, because he recognizes there's always room to improve. But there's also ways that we can do about that. And then there's other people like, Alex Connors, I might be able to listen up, motherfucker. This is what's happening. Like, he and I can really push on each other and we're okay. So it's important that as a coach, you're adaptable to each individual's personality traits,
Tell him he's a shit cunt.
Yeah, that's Alex, basically. Because he's going to call you one,
100%.
And if you ever want to get anything done in any timely manner in the gym, don't go with Alex. That's the other rule. That's my B last shit, is don't train with Alex if you want to get it done in an hour and a half. Because
is that just because he chats too much? Yeah.
Oh my God. Bro,
I got stuck talking to him backstage. He's great though. But yeah, he's a very easy chat, that's for sure.
We got on
this story, bro. I'm in Romania. I walk into this gym. He's been there for 2 days. And I'm like, he's doing like a deload session of like 6 sets. It took us like 90 minutes because Alex Stevenson fucks as well. He's so Australian. He's like yelling at the people as they're walking who barely speak English. What's up, motherfucker? And like, oh, and then he'd be like, Dean, come and meet this cunt. Like, I'm like, do they know that this is like loving? Like, I'm not sure if they're familiar with like the Aussieisms of you, Alex. And he's like talking to like 10 different people. And I'm like, how do you know everybody here within 10 days? And just
was he still in prep at this point as well?
Dude, he's 2-3 days out.
Mate, I'm in and out of the gym within 45 minutes at most in peak week. I just can't wait to get out of the gym. I'm just like in and out, smash it out as quickly as possible. I know, like, you'll set my program out and you'll say, like, rest at least 2 minutes, and I'm like sitting there waiting because I'm ready to go. Like, I just want to get in and out as quickly as possible.
And Alex in Romania was like he'd been living there for 6 years. It was hilarious. All right, guys. The final question of the pod is always a would you rather. I'm geeing it up way too much. It's not that impressive. All right, so who should I ask first? All right, scissors, paper. No, that's probably not going to work. Pick a number out of 10, Maddie and Tom, who has to answer this first. And whoever's the closest will have to choose between 1 and 10, and it can't be 7. Maddie, what's your number?
5.
Tom?
3.
All right, Tom, the number was 3. You get to choose if you answer this first or second. The would you rather is, would you rather get an erection on stage during your winning photo that will be posted everywhere, or shit yourself audibly on the gym floor while everyone is filming your 1 RM attempt?
I'll answer this one. I'll answer this one first because I'd much rather shit myself on the gym floor. That's an easy one for me. That's an easy one because you mentioned in the first scenario that there's photographic evidence of this occurring, whereas if you shit yourself on the gym floor, there's a chance that no one's going to record it. You might be able to clean it up real quick.
It's IFBB pro Tom Stanley completing a 1 RM attempt. You think no one's filming that?
Oh, there's probably a camera on me. Yeah, you're right. But I'm still taking the shit. I'm still taking the shit myself.
I think if the weight's respective, the shit's warranted, Like
that's where I was going to head with.
That's it. There's justification for it. Yeah.
There's females
I'm taking that.
So Maddie was pushing his absolute max there, and I'm somewhat accepting of seeing what the result of that and what's happened, as opposed to having an erection. Did you say being watered? You're winning on stage.
Well, you're doing this one. Hands are above the head, and you got a chubby.
My little
That's horrible. You don't want
that. You could just claim to be Bo Lewis.
Oh fuck.
I'm not sure who's that. What happened?
Oh, there? he's the 212 competitor that needs to get custom made trunks because
I've heard of this.
Now we had this conversation, Dean, about how you sit in your trunks as well. Like if you're Whitney Downey kind of guy, then getting an erection before you win is going to be a bit of a problem because it's going to obviously start to protrude out on the way up until it gets to full mast. But if you're someone who tucks it up and into the pouch that way, again, assuming steroid user, little testicles, we're probably going to be able to make everything come up in a nice tight little bunch up. Maybe you'll get away with it. Maybe you'd be able to hide it.
No, I think the opposite. If you're a downward tucker, it's never going to go full mast. It's just going to get a little firm. And it might become a bit obvious.
Oh, it's this little
if you're up and to the left,
that is up to the left. Is what goes in my trunks.
If you've never experienced this, when you're on stage and do a front lat spread, and you pull the lower abdomen in, it always feels like your trunks have come off, like they loosen up. There's the elastic is not tight enough at the top to hold that thing in. It would have literally just poked through the top. Like the marshmallow would be evident.
Now, either my trunks are too big or I'm too small.
Oh man, I wouldn't want to shit myself audibly in the gym. I also wouldn't really want an erection around a thing, but I'm definitely a downward tucker.
See, I'm an upward tucker, but I'd probably still go with the erection, to be honest. At least I could be like, look, I took a bit of Cialis for my pump backstage. Like, it just happened. It was a happy accident. It was pharmacologically induced. I'm not a weirdo.
And also I was excited for winning.
I'm surprised anyone's taking the erection.
I've seen it.
Tony believe that you're in a physical state to justify getting an erection on stage, even with or without Cialis. I don't believe
this is how, to bring him up again to finish it, this is how Alex Connors and I bonded backstage in the Kingston Centre at the Nationals in 2018, I think it was. And he was seeing me like pop a pill or something. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, just taking Cialis and some caffeine." And he's like, "What? Aren't you getting?" And I was like, "Yeah, if anything helps, And then he had a friend there who was like, "Would you like any of this?" And then he pulled out a bag. And I was like, "Why do you have that here?" He's like, "It's for after." I was like, "Oh, okay, sure."
Pre-stage pump up. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Good times.
I was like, good luck to you. All right, boys. Very much appreciated getting on. Congratulations once again. I am looking forward to the progression that will no doubt come from both of you over the coming 18 months-ish now.
And for those that are listening, I could do something like Tom Stanley in 18 months. Did you say 6 kilos, mate?
Yeah, I think it was like 5.5. Yeah.
Still exceptional.
We just got to do it all again now.
Yeah. Give me some too, please, just in case.
And this is the other thing you talked about before, Matty, getting to that final bit, like this is when most people quit. I think this is the thing too, the more advanced you get as a bodybuilder and the more muscular and hypermuscular you get, the further you get away from your like natural set point. It's the repetition of, like, you've just done 2 years of heavy focus, to get on stage. And to be fair, man, like by the time you got on stage, you would have been probably 109-ish, 110 on the weekend that has just passed. And what were you at WBFF Universe, 102?
Yeah, I think maybe 101, 102. I would have been 101 maybe on stage that day in London. And then I was definitely 110, would have been 110 on stage at Nationals there.
Yeah, so I mean, you've done a Tom Stanley, so it's all good.
That was nearly 4 years. But there was 2 years of dicking around, and then 2 years that actually made some progress with Dean when we decided IFBB, here we come.
You also had a hell of a lot more muscle to begin with. So it's probably more impressive at this point if you can add another 5 kilos onto that frame. Whereas my frame still has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so but it is that there's a lot of people are going to get to this level of hypermuscular physique, but like then getting beyond that to like that elite tier level is it's just the same as what it is. Like doing the last 10 minutes on the treadmill is like doing the next 10 months of pushing. So take the breaks while you enjoy them. Maddie's going to be off to Bali soon, have a little bit of a rest there, and then it's game on.
Look out.
For anyone listening, obviously, if you like this, as always, give us a share, give us a like, tag the boys, tag us. Maybe answer the would you rather question. Let's see who's more into pooping themselves versus getting erections on stage. Well, then we can filter out all the weirdos.
Is any weirdos just drop in an application to me?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, boys.
All right.
All right, guys. Cheers. Have a good night.